That evening, Anna drove home to pack some clothes. The house would be seized as evidence soon, another casualty of Robert's crimes. As she walked through the quiet rooms, memories flooded back, their dinner parties, their conversations, their life together. Had any of it been real? In their bedroom, she found the framed photo from their wedding day. They looked so happy, so in love. She placed it face down in a drawer. Some memories were better left behind. Her phone buzzed, a text from Thompson. "Department's not the same without you. Doors always open if you want your badge back." Anna thought about Agent Chen's offer, about Thompson's invitation, about all the paths now opening before her. Robert had tried to put her in a cage, but in doing so, he'd only proved what she'd known all along. You can't change who you are, not really. She looked around one last time at the perfect house that had never quite felt like home. Then she walked out, closing the door on her old life. Her police badge was warm in her pocket, a reminder of who she'd always been and who she'd be again. In the end, Robert had been right about one thing: love does require sacrifice. But he'd been wrong about what needed to be sacrificed. It was never about giving up her career or her identity. The real sacrifice was giving up the comfortable lie to face the difficult truth. As she drove away, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold, the same color as the cage she'd broken free from. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenges, and change. But for the first time in months, Anna felt truly, completely free. The morning of the takedown dawned bright and clear. Anna had barely slept, watching Robert's peaceful face in the early light. He had no idea that his carefully constructed world was about to crumble. "Big board meeting today," he said over breakfast, straightening his favorite tie. "Don't wait up, we'll probably work late." Anna nodded, pushing her untouched toast around her plate. "I have foundation work to catch up on anyway. One last lie in a marriage built on them." She waited until his car disappeared down the driveway before calling Thompson. "He's heading in. Everyone ready?" "FBI's in position. Just stay clear until it's done." Thompson paused. "You sure you don't want to be there?" Anna touched the badge in her pocket, her old one, which she'd retrieved from its hiding place that morning. "I'll be there, just not how he expects." The Cybervance Technologies building gleamed in the morning sun, its glass walls reflecting the clouds above. Anna parked across the street, watching FBI agents disguised as office workers entering the building. The takedown was planned for 10 a.m. during the board meeting when all the major players would be present. At 9:55, Anna walked through the lobby, nodding to the security guard who knew her as the CEO's wife. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she headed not to the Foundation's offices, but to the executive floor. The diamond bracelet felt heavy on her wrist. The boardroom doors were closed when she reached them. Through the glass walls, she could see Robert standing at the head of the table, confidently delivering his presentation. Other board members nodded along, unaware that federal agents were quietly taking position throughout the building. At exactly 10 a.m., the elevator doors opened. FBI agents poured out, led by Agent Chen, who'd been coordinating with Anna for weeks. "Mrs. Lin," she nodded respectfully. "Would you like to do the honors?" Anna took a deep breath and pushed open the boardroom doors. The look of confusion on Robert's face quickly turned to understanding as agents followed her in. "What's going on?" one board member demanded, standing up. "Robert, what is this?" Robert's eyes were fixed on Anna. "You," he said softly. "All this time." "Robert Lin." Anna stepped forward, her voice steady. "As a former sheriff of Riverside County working in conjunction with the FBI, I'm here to inform you that you're under arrest for money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The room erupted in chaos. Board members jumped up, papers scattered, voices raised in panic and protest. But Anna kept her eyes on Robert as Agent Chen began reading him his rights. "I gave you everything," Robert said, his voice breaking as agents secured his hands behind his back. "Our home, the foundation, a perfect life. Why wasn't it enough?" Anna slipped off the diamond bracelet and placed it on the conference table. "Because you asked me to stop being who I am. And that was the one thing I couldn't give you." As agents led the board members away, Thompson appeared in the doorway. "Just like old times, Chief," he said with a small smile. The next few hours were a blur of activity, FBI agents swarmed the building, seizing computers and documents. Anna gave her official statement detailing how she'd uncovered the operation and gathered evidence. News vans began appearing outside as word of the arrest spread. Late that afternoon, Anna stood in Robert's office, now sealed with police tape, looking out over the city. Agent Chen joined her, holding a cup of coffee. "The evidence you gathered is solid," she said. "Multiple counts of money laundering spanning years. Shell companies, fake charities, the works. He'll be going away for a long time." Anna nodded, watching her reflection in the window. "The foundation. Some of the staff were involved, others were innocent. We'll sort it out." Agent Chen paused. "The FBI could use someone with your skills, you know, especially someone who can spot financial crimes from the inside." A small smile tugged at Anna's lips. "Aren't you offering me a job? Let's call it a career change." Her real one this time. Robert beamed, squeezing Anna's hand. "She's my greatest asset," he said proudly. The words made her skin crawl. How much of their marriage had been about assets and liabilities. Late that night, Anna met Thompson in a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. She handed him a drive containing everything she'd gathered. "This is it," she said quietly. "Enough to take down the whole operation." Thompson reviewed the files on his laptop, letting out a low whistle. "You've got them dead to rights, Chief. The FBI's going to love this." He looked up at her. "Aren't you sure you want to do this? Once we move, there's no going back." Anna twisted the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "I took an oath to serve and protect. That didn't end when I turned in my badge." She took a deep breath. "Robert made me choose between my job and our marriage. But he never understood. Being a cop isn't just a job. It's who I am." They spent the next 2 hours planning the takedown. The FBI would need time to review the evidence and set up their operation. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake could alert Robert and send him running with his millions. As Anna drove home in the pre-dawn hours, she thought about the life she'd built with Robert. The house, the foundation, the social circle, all of it built on lies. Part of her heart was breaking, but a stronger part felt more alive than she had in months. Pulling into their driveway, she saw the lights were on. Robert was waiting up for her. She touched the recording device in her pocket, took a deep breath, and prepared to play her role one last time. The end was coming, but first, she had to be the perfect wife for just a little longer. Anna waited until Robert left for his morning meeting before making the call. Her hands shook slightly as she dialed Deputy Thompson's number. It rang 3 times before his familiar voice answered. "Chief, is everything okay?" The concern in his voice made her throat tight. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me?" They arranged to meet at a small coffee shop across town, far from both the police station and Cybervant's offices. Anna chose a corner table with a clear view of both exits. Old habits die hard. When Thompson walked in, he was in civilian clothes, just as she'd asked. "You look good," he said, sitting down. Then he saw her face. "But something's wrong." Anna pulled out her phone, showing him the photos she'd taken. "I need your help, but this stays between us for now. I can't risk this getting out until we have everything solid." Thompson's eyes widened as he scrolled through the evidence. "This is big, Chief, really big." He looked up at her. "Is this why he wanted you to quit?" "I think so," Anna replied, stirring her untouched coffee. "Maybe he thought having a sheriff for a wife was too risky, or maybe he really did worry about my safety. I don't know what's real anymore." Over the next hour, they formed a plan. Thompson would quietly pull financial records through official channels, while Anna continued gathering evidence from the inside. They'd need a rock-solid case before taking it to the FBI. No loose ends, no room for doubt. Back at home, Anna moved through her days like an undercover officer. She played the perfect wife, attended foundation events, and smiled at all the right moments. But every minute was part of her investigation. One evening, during another of Robert's late nights at the office, Anna accessed his laptop. He'd left it home by mistake, something he'd never done before. Her hands steady, she plugged in the password she'd watched him type countless times. The files she found confirmed her worst fears and revealed even more. Cybervance wasn't just laundering money, they were helping others do it too. Major companies, even some charities, were running their illegal funds through Robert's elaborate system. The foundation she now ran was part of it, a perfect cover for moving suspicious money. "You're up late." Robert's voice made her jump. She hadn't heard him come home. Quickly, she switched to a foundation spreadsheet. "Just finishing some work," she said, forcing a smile. "How was your meeting?" He loosened his tie, looking tired. "Complicated. The Beijing office is giving us trouble." He kissed the top of her head. "Don't stay up too late." Anna waited until his footsteps faded upstairs before letting out her breath. She sent what she found to her secure email, then carefully erased all traces of her search. As she closed the laptop, she caught her reflection in the dark screen. She looked like a stranger to herself. The next few weeks were a careful dance of gathering evidence while maintaining appearances. Anna attended charity galas on Robert's arm while wearing a hidden recorder. She organized foundation events while secretly documenting every suspicious transaction. Each night, she added to her growing case file, hidden in a secure cloud drive Thompson had set up. During a particularly lavish dinner party at their home, Anna watched Robert charm their guests, other executives, charity heads, even a state senator. They all laughed at his jokes, praised his business success, admired their perfect life. None of them knew they were being recorded. "Your wife is doing amazing things with the foundation," one guest gushed. "Such important work." "Quiet," she lied, stirring the pasta sauce. "Just catching up on some foundation paperwork." Robert loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. "The foundation's lucky to have you. We all are." He smiled at her, that same smile that had won her heart at the charity gala years ago. Was anything about their life together real? That night, Anna lay awake long after Robert had fallen asleep. The moonlight filtering through their bedroom windows cast strange shadows on the wall. In the morning, she would have to make a decision that would change everything. She thought about her old life, the integrity of the badge, the satisfaction of pursuing justice, the pride in protecting her community. She thought about her new life, the luxury, the comfort, the man sleeping peacefully beside her who might not be who she thought he was. Rolling over, Anna opened her bedside drawer and pulled out her old detective notebook. It was time to do what she did best, serve and protect, even if it meant protecting people from the man she loved. As she began to write, her hand steady and sure, the diamond bracelet caught the moonlight. It no longer felt like a symbol of love, it felt like evidence. Evidence of how far someone would go to keep their secret safe. Tomorrow, she would start making calls to her old contacts. Tomorrow, she would become what she was always meant to be, not just a sheriff, but a seeker of truth, no matter where that truth led. The discovery happened on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary day that changes everything. Anna was organizing Robert's home office, something she'd been putting off for weeks. The housekeeper usually handled it, but Anna needed something to do with her restless energy. She was sorting through a stack of papers when she noticed something odd. 2 different financial reports for the same quarter with significantly different numbers. At first, she thought it was just a draft and a final version, but the longer she looked, the more her old investigative instincts buzzed. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Anna sat in Robert's leather chair, spreading the documents across his mahogany desk. Years of police work had taught her to trust her gut, and right now, her gut was screaming that something was wrong. One report was clearly meant for shareholders, showing impressive profits and growth. The other, marked internal only, told a different story. Anna's heart beat faster as she dug deeper into the stack of papers. More discrepancies emerged, more double books, more questions. The sound of a car in the driveway made her freeze. Robert wasn't due home for hours. Quickly, she snapped photos of the documents with her phone and returned everything exactly as she'd found it. By the time the front door opened, she was casually dusting the bookshelves. It was just the housekeeper, returning from her lunch break, Mrs. Lin. "I could have organized the office," Mrs. Chen said, looking concerned. "I needed something to do," Anna replied, trying to keep her voice casual. "It's good to keep busy." That night, after Robert called to say he'd be working late again, Anna sat in their kitchen with her laptop. The diamond bracelet felt heavy on her wrist as she began to dig. Her police training kicked in, start with the basics, follow the money, look for patterns. She pulled up news articles about Cybervance Technologies, reading between the lines of press releases and financial reports. Everything looked perfect on the surface, too perfect. She thought about Robert's recent late nights, his private phone calls, his vague answers about overseas divisions. The next day at the foundation office, Anna watched Robert through her window as he walked to his car. The man she loved, the man she'd given up her career for, was he hiding something massive? Part of her wanted to ignore the evidence, to keep living in their golden bubble, but that part was getting smaller by the minute. Patricia, she called to her assistant. Cancel my appointments for the next few days. Family emergency. Hannah spent the next 3 days building her case. She used every investigative skill she'd learned in 15 years of law enforcement. Her dining room table became a command center when Robert was at work, covered with printouts and notes. She created timelines, followed money trails, and connected dots that had been staring her in the face. The picture that emerged made her sick to her stomach. Cybervents Technologies, Robert's pride and joy, was running a sophisticated money laundering operation. The overseas divisions weren't just having issues. There were shell companies moving illegal money through a maze of transactions. One evening, as she was reviewing bank statements, a text from Deputy Thompson popped up on her phone. "Miss you around here, Chief, not the same without you." Anna stared at the message for a long time. She thought about the day Robert had asked her to quit, his insistence that she stay away from law enforcement. Had he known this day would come? Had he worried that having a sheriff for a wife might expose his operation? The sound of Robert's car pulling into the driveway snapped her back to reality. She quickly cleared the table, hiding her research in a locked drawer. When he walked in, she was in the kitchen, starting dinner like the perfect housewife he'd wanted her to become. "Something smells good," he said, kissing her cheek. She forced herself not to stiffen at his touch. "How was your day?" "Complicated. Some issues with our overseas divisions." He loosened his tie. "Nothing for you to worry about." But something in his tone made her old investigative instincts tingle. After 15 years in law enforcement, she knew when someone was holding back information. Robert had been working late more often, taking calls in private, looking worried when he thought she wasn't watching. That night, lying beside him in their king-size bed, Anna stared at the ceiling. The old her would have followed her instincts, started asking questions, looking for patterns. But that wasn't her life anymore. She'd chosen this. The perfect house, the perfect job, the perfect husband. So why did everything feel so perfectly wrong? As if sensing her thoughts, Robert rolled over in his sleep, his arm draping across her protectively. Anna closed her eyes, trying to quiet the detective's voice in her head that kept whispering, "Something isn't right." The voice sounded a lot like her old self, the self she'd left behind with her badge. The first month of Anna's new life felt like living in someone else's dream. Their mansion, which had always been just a place to sleep between shifts, now stretched around her like an elegant prison. The marble floors echoed with her footsteps as she wandered from room to room, trying to fill endless hours. Robert had arranged everything perfectly, of course. Her new office at the Cybervents Foundation was gorgeous, all glass and chrome, with a view of the city skyline. Her assistant, Patricia, kept her calendar filled with charity luncheons, board meetings, and fundraising galas. On paper, she was making a difference. In reality, she felt like a well-dressed puppet. "Mrs. Lynn." Patricia poked her head into the office one afternoon. "The Women's Business League is waiting for your presentation on corporate philanthropy." Anna nodded, smoothing her designer suit, another of Robert's gifts. She'd gotten used to wearing heels instead of boots, silk instead of Kevlar. But sometimes, when she caught her reflection in the office windows, she barely recognized herself. The presentation went well, it always did. Anna had learned to smile at the right moments, to say the right things. The ladies of the Business League were impressed by her transition from law enforcement to corporate philanthropy. "Such an inspiring career change," one woman gushed during the reception. "And so brave of you to choose family over career." Back in her office, Anna found herself staring at her phone, thumb hovering over her old department's number. She still kept in touch with some of her former colleagues, but the conversations grew more awkward each time. They were living the life she'd left behind, chasing leads, protecting the community, making real differences. Thinking about ordering lunch. Robert's voice startled her. He stood in her doorway, handsome as ever in his tailored suit. She quickly locked her phone screen. "Just checking emails," she lied, hating how easily it came now. What brings you down to the foundation floor? Can't a man surprise his beautiful wife? He crossed the room to kiss her cheek. I thought we could try that new French place for lunch. The owner's son might need our help with a youth program funding. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't put prices on the menu. As they discussed the youth program, Anna watched other diners, mostly wealthy women in designer clothes, laughing over wine at 2 in the afternoon. Was this really her life now? You seem distracted, Robert noted, reaching for her hand across the table. The diamond bracelet, which she now wore daily, caught the light. Just thinking about the upcoming gala, she said. Another lie. She'd actually been thinking about a news report she'd seen that morning about a drug bust in her old jurisdiction. There's so much to coordinate. Robert smiled, squeezing her hand. You're doing amazing work, honey. The foundation's never run better. His phone buzzed. Another business call. Sorry, I have to take this. Order dessert if you'd like. As he stepped away from the table, Anna found herself studying him. He'd been working later than usual lately, coming home with a preoccupied look she recognized from her detective days. Something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on what. That evening, their house felt especially empty. Robert had called to say he'd be working late, again. Anna wandered into their home gym, where her workout clothes hung untouched. She used to run 5 miles every morning, train in hand-to-hand combat twice a week. Now her exercise consisted of yoga classes with other executives' wives. On impulse, she changed into her workout gear. The punching bag in the corner, a remnant from her police training days, beckoned. The first punch felt like coming home. Soon she was lost in the rhythm, sweat dripping, muscles burning in a familiar way. Anna? Robert's voice cut through her concentration. She hadn't heard him come home. He stood in the doorway, looking concerned. It's almost midnight. What are you doing? She stepped back from the bag, breathing hard. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd work out a bit. She could see his eyes taking in her stance, her wrapped hands, the intensity in her face. You look like you're training for something, he said carefully. Is everything okay? Anna unwrapped her hands slowly. Of course. Just restless. She forced a smile. How was work? The farewell ceremony was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Her team had prepared a video montage of her career highlights, from rookie officer to sheriff. There were speeches, tears, and laughter. Robert attended, standing proudly at her side, his hand warm against her lower back. I'm not good at goodbyes, Anna said when it was her turn to speak, so I'll just say thank you. Thank you for being my family, my support, my strength. This isn't just a department, it's a calling, a purpose, a home. She paused, fighting back tears. And while I may be leaving, a piece of my heart will always patrol these streets with you. Later that night, as she and Robert drove home, her now empty office seemed to follow them like a ghost. The diamond bracelet, finally removed from her desk drawer, felt heavy on her wrist. Robert reached over and squeezed her hand. You've made the right choice, he said softly. You'll see. Anna watched the station disappear in the side mirror, remembering her first day, her first arrest, her first commendation. Part of her wondered if she'd ever feel as alive as she had with a badge on her chest and a purpose in her step. I hope you're right, she whispered, more to herself than to him. As they pulled into their driveway, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really an ending. It was the beginning of something else entirely. She just wasn't sure yet whether that something would turn out to be a dream or a nightmare. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless internal debates. Anna threw herself into work, taking on extra shifts and complicated cases, as if trying to store up enough memories to last a lifetime. Every arrest, every solved case, every grateful citizen reminded her of what she'd be giving up. One particularly tough night, after wrapping up a missing child case that ended happily, Deputy Thompson caught her staring at the photos on her office wall. Everything okay, Chief? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. Anna traced her finger over a frame showing her graduation from the police academy. Just thinking, she replied, her voice distant. Have you ever wondered if you made the right career choice? Thompson leaned against her desk, following her gaze to the wall of achievements. Every time my kid has a school play I have to miss, he admitted. But then I remember why we do this job. It's not just work, it's a calling. Those words haunted Anna as she drove home that night. The diamond bracelet Robert had given her sat in her desk drawer at work. She couldn't bring herself to wear it while in uniform. At home, Robert was waiting up, as he had been every night since the ultimatum. "Rough day?" he asked, sliding a cup of chamomile tea across the kitchen counter. The concern in his voice was genuine, but Anna couldn't help noticing how his eyes lingered on her gun belt as she set it aside. "We found little Katie Chen today," she said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. She'd wandered off into the state park, scared but safe. She looked up at him. "The look on her parents' faces when we brought her home, you can't buy that feeling, Robert." He reached across the counter, taking her hand. "And you can still help people through the foundation. Different methods, same results." His thumb brushed over where the diamond bracelet should have been. "Have you given any more thought to my offer?" Anna pulled her hand back slowly. "I think about it every minute of every day." She took a deep breath. "I need to know something. If I say no, if I choose to stay on the force, will you really leave?" Robert's face hardened slightly. "I can't spend my life waiting for that phone call, Anna." "I won't." He walked around the counter to stand beside her. "I love you enough to give you this choice, but I love myself enough to walk away if you choose the job over us." The next morning, Anna sat in her patrol car for an extra few minutes before entering the station. She'd barely slept, but she'd made her decision. The weight of it pressed against her chest as she walked to her office, nodding to her colleagues along the way. By afternoon, the news had spread through the department. Anna Rodriguez, the groundbreaking female sheriff, was retiring. The reactions ranged from disbelief to understanding, but it was the disappointment in some of the younger female officers' eyes that hit her hardest. "You're an inspiration, Chief," Officer Chen told her during the hastily arranged farewell gathering. "My daughter wants to be just like you when she grows up." The young officer's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What should I tell her?" Anna swallowed hard. "Tell her that sometimes love requires sacrifice," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her heart. "And that there are many ways to serve and protect." The last day was the hardest. Anna arrived early, before most of her staff. She walked through the quiet halls, running her fingers along the familiar walls. In her office, she began packing her personal items, photos, awards, memories of 15 years of service. The photo that nearly broke her was one from last year's police award ceremony. She stood proud in her dress uniform, Robert beaming beside her as she held her Officer of the Year plaque. They looked so happy, so perfect. Had the cracks been there even then, invisible to the camera's lens? As she placed her badge on the chief's desk, soon to be someone else's desk, Deputy Thompson appeared in the doorway. "The team wants to give you a proper send-off," he said softly. "We're all gathering in the briefing room." Anna felt the weight of the bracelet on her wrist. It was beautiful, elegant, and somehow suffocating. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" Robert smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's what makes me good at my job." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. "And soon you'll see that this is the best decision for both of us." As they got ready for bed that night, Anna caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The diamond bracelet sparkled under the soft lighting, beautiful and binding. Robert's words echoed in her mind, "Reconsider our future together." Was she ready to risk her marriage for her career? Or was her career worth risking for her marriage? She slipped into bed beside Robert, who was already half asleep. He instinctively pulled her close, murmuring, "I love you," before drifting off completely. Anna lay awake for hours, the weight of his ultimatum pressing down on her chest, harder than any bulletproof vest she'd ever worn. 2 weeks after their dinner at Lorenzo's, Anna noticed subtle changes in their home. Fresh flowers appeared daily in every room, their private chef prepared all her favorite meals, and Robert came home earlier than usual. It was like living in a perfect dream, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. One evening, as she returned from work, the house was unusually quiet. The normal sounds of their housekeeper's activities or the chef's dinner preparations were missing. Instead, a trail of rose petals led from the front door through their marble foyer and up the grand staircase. "Robert," she called out, her police instincts automatically making her aware of every shadow and sound. The only response was soft classical music drifting down from upstairs. Following the rose petals, Anna found herself in their master bedroom. A garment bag lay on their king-sized bed, with a note attached. Wear this. Meet me on the terrace at 7. She recognized Robert's neat handwriting. Inside the bag was a stunning red evening gown, exactly her size, exactly her style. At precisely 7 p.m., Anna stepped onto their expensive terrace. Robert had transformed it into something out of a romantic movie. Hundreds of tiny lights twinkled overhead, creating a starry effect against the evening sky. A table for two was set with their finest china, crystal glasses catching the light of tall candles. Robert stood at the terrace's edge, wearing one of his best suits, looking out over their perfectly manicured gardens. When he turned to face her, his expression was a mixture of love and determination. "You look beautiful," he said, walking over to kiss her cheek. They sat down to a meal that would have impressed any food critic, all Anna's favorites, perfectly prepared. Robert kept the conversation light at first, asking about her day, sharing funny stories from his office. But as their dessert plates were cleared, his expression grew serious. "Anna," he began, reaching for her hand across the table. "We need to finish our conversation from 2 weeks ago." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I've been patient, hoping you'd bring it up yourself, but I can't wait any longer." Anna felt her chest tighten. She'd known this was coming, had felt it in every extravagant gesture over the past 2 weeks. "Robert, Please let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I've built this company from nothing, made it into something that changes lives. But none of that matters if I lose you." His voice cracked slightly. "Last night, I woke up in a cold sweat. I dreamed about getting that call, the one every police officer's spouse dreads." He stood up, walking to her side of the table. "I can't live like this anymore, Anna. I won't." Kneeling beside her chair, he took both her hands in his. "I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you, to leave the force." Anna tried to pull her hands away, but he held firm. "You can't ask me to do this," she whispered. "I'm not just asking," Robert replied, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm telling you that I need this. We need this. If you won't do it for yourself, do it for us." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a stunning diamond bracelet. Think of it as a retirement gift, a new beginning. Anna stared at the bracelet, its diamonds catching the candlelight. "And if I say no?" Robert's expression hardened slightly. "Then we need to seriously reconsider our future together." He stood up, running a hand through his hair. "I love you, Anna, more than anything. But I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if you'll come home each night." The terrace fell silent except for the soft music still playing in the background. Anna looked out over their garden, remembering how proud she felt when she first made deputy chief, how accomplished when she became sheriff. Her whole life had been building toward this career. "I need time," she finally said. "You have until the end of the month," Robert replied, his voice softening again. "That's 3 weeks. Enough time to handle the transition properly." He slipped the diamond bracelet onto her wrist. "I've already spoken to my board about creating a position for you overseeing our charitable foundation. You'll still be helping people, just in a different way." Their food arrived, but neither paid much attention to it. The conversation continued, weaving between concern and frustration, love and control. Robert painted a picture of a different life. Peaceful mornings together, charity galas, travel, family time. It sounded perfect on paper, but to Anna it felt like a beautiful cage. As they drove home that night, the city lights blurred past their windows. Anna was quiet, thinking about everything Robert had said. She looked at her husband's profile as he drove, wondering when things had started to change. Was it the shooting? Or had this been building for longer? Back home, as they got ready for bed, Robert wrapped his arms around her from behind, meeting her eyes in the bathroom mirror. "Just promise me you'll think about it," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her shoulder where the bullet had grazed her. "That's all I'm asking for now." Anna nodded, but as she lay in bed that night, listening to Robert's steady breathing beside her, she couldn't shake the feeling that their perfect life was about to change dramatically. What she didn't know was just how right that feeling would turn out to be. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Riverside County Sheriff's Department parking lot as Deputy Chief Anna Rodriguez stepped out of her patrol car. Her badge caught the light, sending a brief glimmer across the concrete. At 42, she had become the first female sheriff in the county's history, and everyone knew she'd earned it the hard way. Inside the building, her team was already gathering for the morning briefing. The familiar scent of coffee and determination filled the air as Anna walked in, her boots clicking against the floor. "Morning, Chief," called out Deputy Thompson, raising his coffee mug in greeting. The respect in his voice was genuine. Anna had earned it through years of dedication, countless solved cases, and an unwavering commitment to justice. But today, something else occupied her thoughts. Her husband, Robert Lin, had been acting strange lately. As the CEO of Cybervance Technologies, he was used to being in control, making decisions that affected thousands of employees. Their different worlds had always created an interesting dynamic in their relationship. She fought crime on the streets while he fought corporate battles in boardrooms. Anna remembered their first meeting at a charity gala 5 years ago. She'd been there representing the department, and he'd been the keynote speaker. Neither of them had expected to find love that night, but something clicked. Maybe it was how different they were, her straightforward, no-nonsense approach to life, complementing his sophisticated corporate world. "Chief, we've got updates on the Henderson case." Detective Wilson's voice pulled her back to the present. Anna nodded, pushing her personal thoughts aside. The morning briefing went smoothly, with updates on ongoing investigations and patrol assignments. Her team was one of the best in the state, with a clear-up rate that made other departments envious. Later that afternoon, as Anna was reviewing case files in her office, her phone buzzed. It was Robert. "Dinner at Lorenzo's tonight?" His message read. "Need to discuss something important." Anna's stomach tightened slightly. Lorenzo's was their special occasion restaurant, the place where he proposed. Important discussions at Lorenzo's usually meant big changes were coming. The rest of her shift was busy. A robbery investigation, a community outreach meeting, and endless paperwork. Anna handled each task with her usual efficiency, but Robert's message lingered in the back of her mind. As the sun began to set, she handed over command to the night shift supervisor and headed home to change. Their house sat in an exclusive neighborhood, a beautiful blend of modern architecture and comfort. As Anna pulled into their circular driveway, she noticed Robert's Tesla was already there. Usually he worked late, often past midnight. Him being home early only added to her unease. "Hey there, Chief," Robert greeted her with a warm smile as she walked in. He was already dressed in one of his expensive suits, his dark hair perfectly styled. "Ready for dinner?" There was something in his voice, a slight tension that only someone who knew him well would notice. At Lorenzo's, they were seated at their usual table, a quiet corner with a view of the city lights. The waiter brought their favorite wine without being asked. They were regulars here after all. As Anna took a sip, she studied her husband's face. Robert was handsome in a classical way, with kind eyes that could turn stern during business negotiations. Tonight, those eyes held a mix of emotions she couldn't quite read. "Anna," he started, after they'd ordered, "we need to talk about your job." His voice was gentle but firm. "The incident last week, it got me thinking." He was referring to a shootout during a drug bust where a bullet had grazed Anna's shoulder. It had been minor, she barely needed stitches, but Robert had been shaken. "Every time you leave for work, I wonder if you'll come home," he continued, reaching across the table to take her hand. "We have enough money, more than enough. You don't need to put yourself in danger anymore." Anna felt her chest tighten. This wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation, but something felt different tonight, more final. "Robert, you know my job isn't just about money. It's who I am. It's what I do." "But it doesn't have to be," he insisted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Think about it. You could do charity work, run the foundation I started. Make a difference without risking your life every day.